Hi, Achim here from InnerSpace Explorers. Today we're going to talk about lost at sea and what to bring in case that happens. And before I get into this, if you like my content, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. And if you want to discuss stuff a little bit more in detail, please also have a look at my Patreon site. Okay, let's talk about lost at sea. Generally, I wanted to do this video together with Jacob Charles, who is an ISE instructor and who actually had this issue. For some reason, we don't get that together. Most probably my mistake, or most probably up to my weird schedule. Nevertheless, I put a link in the description, and I also have a link on my liked channels to Jake's channel, and have a look, because he actually documented his time lost at sea with his GoPro, and it's pretty awesome footage and pretty rough. Fortunately, he was lucky and he was found in the end, but that's a super interesting thing. It was also covered in a Dive talk where he was the guest, and it's also worth looking, and I put a link to that video in the description as well. But we don't want to talk today about that specific story, but we want to talk a little bit about what happens if you lost at sea and how can you prepare for that, what is good to bring, what's not reasonable, and so on. I had the issue as well. I've been lost over a wreck in Croatia a lot of years ago on a solo dive, and for some reason they didn't realize that I was still in the water when they left the wreck and went back home, which was like 13 miles. And yeah, I spent a lovely 8 hours there. My luck was that there was a permanent buoy attached to the wreck, and when I came up and I realized there's no body anymore, I attached myself to that buoy with a bit of line, and I knew the worst thing that can happen is I have to stay there overnight, because I knew next morning there will be a dive boat coming back for sure, because there was a scheduled dive. So that was uncomfortable, but not a real issue. Mediterranean, not the white sharks all over the place or any other animals that could be an issue, and temperature was also not that bad, so not a real drama. But nevertheless, I have a little bit of a feeling of how this feels, or a little bit of an idea how that feels. So let's talk a little bit about how to prepare for that. Generally speaking, it's obviously, you have to think a little bit about where do you dive. So what's the environment where you're in? And so temperature definitely is a big issue, and I always highly recommend to divers that they should plan for longer exposure times than just the diving. So we are going to have a trip to Egypt next week, and at the moment the group's discussing what to bring: wetsuits, dry suits, if dry suits, what undergarment, etc. And of course there's a huge difference if you say, okay, as long as I do is like a 1 hour dive, so my exposure protection is that I bring is good for an hour in 22 degrees water or whatever, but that could be very cold if you are in the same water for 3, 4, 5 hours or longer. So that's something that I normally keep in mind when I'm going for these kind of dives. Staying with that example of Egypt, of course the Red Sea is big and you can get lost there, but it's obviously still a different topic there, diving in the Red Sea, probably close to an island or close to shore, and with a lot of boat traffic, than, for example, diving really offshore, thinking of, let's say, the Andrea Doria, which is about 70 miles offshore in front of New York in the Atlantic Ocean, with way bigger waves and winds and fog and bad weather, etc., and currents. So that's probably a complete different setup and a complete different thinking. So let's talk a little bit about the equipment that you want to bring. I mean, the first thing is, in my opinion, or the first thing that you need to think about is something that can make a signal that's louder than what you can create when you shout. And what's great is a whistle. So if you've seen Titanic, we know all that works. She was rescued in the end because she had that whistle. And all joking aside, I usually keep one in my pocket with a small bolt snap. I have it in my dry suit pocket. And that's something that you hear a lot better, especially on water, than if you just shout or you try to whistle with your lips. Especially when you're cold, that can actually be pretty difficult. And so that whistle is a great idea. The other thing that doesn't cost a fortune and that is great is some sort of reflecting device. So especially if you're really lost and you're drifting somewhere and people are looking for you from a helicopter or from an aircraft, having a small mirror that's a little bit parabolic, I have a picture here, is something that you can use together with the sun to create a reflection, and that's something that you can see from a pretty big distance, and that's a good thing to get the attention of a pilot, for example. Also, obviously, if there's a ship passing by that's far too far away to see you wave or whatever, you can probably still catch their attention with the reflection. And that's an inexpensive, easy device that also just doesn't expire. And this expiring brings me to the next two things. There's this dye that you can buy that actually creates like a colorful spot in the water that is easier to spot from above, which I don't use it. I know there's people that like it, but I would prefer the mirror. As I just said, it's a super simple, inexpensive device, and you don't have to bring that liquid or whatever. Especially if you travel by air, that can be an issue. That's the same thing with the next issue. Depending on where I go, I usually have these mini rockets with me, signal rockets. There it really depends where you are. So in Germany, you need a license for these. As I have a boating license, and in that included is a special license that I can buy these signal devices. There's a picture here. They come from a variety of brands. If you have a boat by yourself, you're obviously familiar with these. The big issue is it's hard to travel by air with them. Depending on how you do that, it's actually forbidden. I think you need special permission, and you need to pre-apply to transport these. So it's actually something you're probably never going to do. But if you travel by car, you can bring these. So I actually had them with me on a couple of dives in the North Sea. And there it was no problem. For example, in Italy, you can buy those free in every boat store. So there's obviously a lot of differences regarding the law. I don't know how it is in the US or in other parts of the world. So if you're interested in that, you really need to check your local laws and make sure you don't do anything wrong that can probably cause legal issues. Another thing that, obviously you should have on every dive when you dive from a boat is a proper S&B. And what I just have here is an example. And normally, if you see my other videos, the how to shoot an S&B and why we shoot the S&B the way we do, etc., I like these small 1 meter, 3 feet buoys, S&Bs, but they don't make a great signaling device. So they're great if you are on a planned dive, like a drift dive, and you want the boat to see where you are. But if the distance gets a little bit bigger, then that can be a real issue. So if you do dives really offshore with a boat, I recommend you to use a bigger one. That's still relatively small, but there's these super big ones that are like 2.5 meters. Obviously a bit more of a pain in the butt to inflate, depending on the depth. If you inflate them really, really deep, it's not an issue. If you inflate them shallow, you have to pump in a lot of more gas to make them stay on the surface, especially if you don't have a lot of tension on the line. And again, what I say in all my videos, you need the closed version. So don't buy open bottom S&Bs, buy the closed versions because they stay a lot better. Last but not least, I want to show you something. I actually have to check out if it's still available, but I love it. I also had this with me on my channel dive and on a lot of offshore dives. It's a Halcyon product, and it was called the Life Raft. And you can transport it in your storage pack, and that's why it's sitting there, because I wanted to show you that. A lot of people are always like, that doesn't fit in a storage pack. It does. And it's like the lift bag that we use on deco dives, or if you really want to shoot something up. and I just want to show you because I really love this. It's so if you're really lost at sea, that's a pretty big piece of kit, and you can inflate it orally or with an with this inlet. And of course I just want to show you that, and that's why I have this little bottle with me. And here it is, and it's actually like a small inflatable boat. And if you take your equipment off and you clip it into one of the D-rings there, so it's next to you, can actually get on top of this and get out of the water, which can be a huge factor. It's also a great swimming helps to keep you afloat. You can actually go over it like that, and it's obviously a great signaling device. I mean, this thing is visible for a long distance, definitely way better than any SMB. The problem is I'm definitely not sure, and I need to check that, if Helson's still producing it. I have this for a lot of years, and always bring it if I'm really far offshore. Really like it. If not, that's actually then I don't know if there's another manufacturer doing something similar. If you're aware of that, put it in the comment section. And also let me know in the comment section if you ever had that experience, if you've ever been lost at sea, how it was, what in the end led to you being rescued. And also let me know what you bring, what you think is reasonable equipment to have in preparation of that scenario. Other than that, stay safe. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.